What is up, LEGO fans? Cow60Bricks here, and today is going to be a very different style of CowNA. So before I explain what we're going to be doing today for episode 8, I am just going to give my regular intro. So CowNA basically is the series where you leave questions down in the comments. Why don't you go do that now? They can be LEGO related or not, but I do know a lot more about LEGO, and there's going to be a 100% chance that I'll answer it basically in episode 9 if you do that. And yeah, stay tuned for episode 9 so you can get your questions answered. But yeah, this week I'm going to be answering a question from last week that I actually didn't have enough time for. So if you remember, Bear995 asked, why do I hate the sequels? And I decided to designate an entire video going through each of my points in detail, so hopefully I can convince you that the sequels are the worst thing to have ever came from the planet of Earth from its very moment of birth. But without further ado, let's just get into CowNA episode 8. Now, an important question to answer is how I'm going to structure this debate, I suppose. And so I'm basically going to be splitting it up into 4 main sections. Now, the first 2 sections are quite connected, as with the last 2, and they're not each their own specific argument. However, I'm not going to spoil what they are yet, because it will flow better if you just don't know really what each one is. And also another thing, some of them won't make too much sense at first, especially the first one, I think. The first section isn't going to be an argument against the sequels, but it will help later on, so you're just going to have to stick with me for that one. But yeah, it's time to get into section 1. So what exactly do I mean by legacy of episodes 1 to 6? Well, I am going to explain that to you right now. So episodes 1 to 6 tell an absolutely beautiful interlinking story that is really the meaning of Star Wars, and it tells a story of a father and son, that obviously being Darth Vader and Luke. Now, the original trilogy on their own, while it is great and amazing, and that's what Star Wars is, right? It was just a simple story, and there was no, I suppose, deeper meaning. It was what it was. And then George Lucas introduced the prequels, which tied everything up absolutely magnificently. What a great note to finish off, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people do not share this opinion, but that is because I believe they can't see what was actually going on. So we'll start with episode 1. Now, the main point of that was introducing the father figure for Anakin and the start of his downfall. This was Qui-Gon Jinn, and he was, of course, killed by Darth Maul. And this is when everything started to go wrong for Anakin, because him not having a father figure is like Luke not having a father figure. However, Anakin realized this in episode 6, and that was how he turned. That is how he turned to the light side. He saw that what had happened to him was happening to Luke, and he wanted to prevent that, and that's how the story kind of finished off. And then, of course, we had episode 2. This was more leading into Anakin's journey to the dark side. So obviously, his love for Padme was the main reason that he turned to the dark side. And that was greatly expressed in episode 2, and it also showed a lot of his fury when his mother died as well, which was more foreshadowing. And then, of course, we have Revenge of the Sith, my favourite film of all time. Absolutely wonderful film. It tied everything up so good. The Darth Vader's eventual turn to the dark side, that entire film was just beautiful. And of course, all the callbacks from the prequels to the originals, like Boba Fett as he was younger, and lots of things like that, just tie it up absolutely perfectly. And of course, let me not forget the lightsaber duels were incredible. So, let me lead into my point. So all of that happened. We've watched episode 1 to 6. Now we're getting to the end of episode 6, and we've seen this amazing journey and all of the deeper messages told. And here we come to the end of episode 6, where everything has been leading up to, where Darth Vader has realized his mistakes and himself in Luke, and he has sacrificed himself, basically. We have an amazing father and son scene, and the film is finally finishing up. And I'm just going to show you one scene, and then we're going to lead right into section 2. See what I just did there? That's called ruining something epic, and that's exactly what The Force Awakens did, hence the title of this section. So I'm not going to go into too much detail in this section, but I'm basically going to tie up section 1 and say that episode 7 came in and absolutely ruined everything they'd building up, and of course the rest of the sequel trilogy after that. But it really was episode 7's mess, and there was no way of fixing that. You've just got an absolutely terrible plot. Now we're going to get into that. But basically just ruined my childhood, that's all I have to say. And to even make things worse, they didn't even try to respect the original trilogy. And one of the ways they disrespected it the most is by, in fact, copying and pasting the entire original trilogy. So before I get into the main arguments of this section, I am actually going to ask you to do something for me. So in a couple of seconds, I'm going to be reading out the plot of a Star Wars film. All I need you to do is pause the video and try and guess what Star Wars film it is. And then you can play again and see if you're correct. Now, I'm not going to flash any images over the screen for this bit, so the visuals are going to be a bit boring. I'm just going to have a picture of the buildable bat for the whole thing. And that's just so I don't give it away. And yeah, just be listening very carefully to me. Right, I'm going to start. The film begins with an attack. Many stormtroopers and a dark black figure with an intimidating mask and wielding a red lightsaber make an assault, capturing a rebel leader who sends a droid with valuable information about a planet-killing weapon. On a desert planet, our young, Force-sensitive protagonist finds the droid, and soon thereafter is whisked off on an adventure they will never forget. The Millennium Falcon carries our unlikely heroes who eventually journey to the Planet Killer, where an old man from wars before the protagonist's time is slain by the mysterious villain. Throughout this film, our protagonist learns more about the Force and begins to train with a blue lightsaber passed down from generations before. The corrupt government within this film, with their army of stormtroopers, are opposed by a large collection of rebels fighting to free the galaxy. Okay, what I need you to do now is pause the video and make your guess. Okay, so now I'm going to reveal what film the plot I wrote up was for. So I'm guessing you either said The Force Awakens or A New Hope. And I am actually surprisingly going to tell you that that plot works absolutely 100% for both of those movies. And you can go back and play thinking of the plot of those films, and you will see for yourself there's absolutely nothing about what I wrote up that doesn't apply to either of those films, which is so bad because that was incredibly specific. And there's so much more. Like, they didn't come up with anything themselves. The villains is completely the exact same story. The whole trilogy follows the exact same story. But it doesn't work because it isn't interlinked with anything else. So it's just stupidity. It's just like history repeats itself, but like completely. And like all of the vehicles, the TIE Fighters, the X-Wings, the U-Wings, the B-Wings, didn't come up with any original vehicles, any original characters. The only thing I would have to say that is original about the entire sequel trilogy is probably the character of Finn, and he doesn't even do anything. They didn't use him well at all. So, like, that's just terrible storytelling that they went and copy and pasted an entire trilogy, put it in there, and ruined the entire Skywalker saga. And I could go on for absolute centuries talking about how many parallels there is between the trilogies, but I'm not going to because I'm going to assume you got the gist of it. It's time to move on to our final section. If I wanted to, I could probably make this video about an hour long and not go over the same points. However, nobody is going to want to watch that. So now I'm just going to basically summarize all of the points we've had in this video. So what the sequels does is they take everything that episode 1 to 6 had built up and takes a big huge crap on it. So the sequels just doesn't fit in at all. Not only did it copy and disrespect the original trilogy, but the tiny bits of plot that it did make up itself are absolutely terrible. They're just rubbish films. They do not fit into Star Wars. They ruin everything that's built up. And one last thing I forgot to mention. The prophecy of Anakin, right? He is supposed to destroy the Sith, which he eventually does in episode 6, of course. And then Palpatine comes back and Rey does it and ruins absolutely everything. I know that's really random, but, like, come on. Hope you enjoyed the video. That's all from me. Have a great I almost forgot, if you don't like, subscribe and share this with your friends, the buildable bat will be very upset.